The majority of the content on this channel is about WarCraft, though you might know there are different settings that I have deep care for. You have seen videos about how I didn't fix the Elder Scrolls for a TTRPG, or a short series on my WarCraft Earth game, blending Earth history with the unique mechanics of my reimagined WarCraft setting. That isn't all though, as there are many more games that I have worked on adapting for my system, and I'm not going to talk about all of them here, but I do want to talk about one of my old favorites. A game I have in fact played before any Warcraft games. Another old Blizzard classic, and that is StarCraft. While playing StarCraft 2 co-op with a friend regularly at a certain point, should probably return to it someday, I was developing ideas, concepts of how to implement either small elements of the StarCraft setting into our main Warcraft universe, or perhaps to incorporate more of it. We've all heard StarCraft being called Warcraft in space, at least if we're old enough. If I somehow got Zoomers or a Gen Alpha watching this, like, good on you kids, for having at least some taste. But the question was, can it work? How do we make it work? And during this process, several different variants came to mind on how to make it work together. The very earliest idea was simply adapting some very superficial aesthetic elements into the setting. Because the core of our game is a reimagined Warcraft setting, we would simply have Warcraft races and cultures in space, in new contexts, isolated from Azeroth, developing into a very surface-level facsimile of some StarCraft elements. We would have a planet Ire, but instead of proper Protoss, we would have a Draenei splinter faction living there, abandoned by Velen in their escape from the Burning Legion. Perhaps they develop their own Dark Templar eventually, and somehow on some other world out there, humans also develop from Titan templates, and we get our Terrans, quote-unquote. And the Zerg are simple enough, being just another bunch of old god minions corrupting the worlds around them. However, it quickly became clear to us that this wasn't really enough. It didn't really scratch that StarCraft itch. Here comes a part of my setting that you may be aware of, if for no other reason because I mentioned it in this video already, and that is WarCraft Earth. As you may or may not know, we have a version of Earth in the same universe as Azeroth and the Burning Legion and so on. So if Earth, fundamental to the StarCraft setting, does exist here, so can the rest of the key concepts of StarCraft. There is only one major problem here. Our Earth is in the year 1185 CE at the time of this recording. So suffice to say, the future Terran colonists did not quite get out there yet. So while we would have no Terrans, we could still have other elements of StarCraft, right? So this second concept that was seriously considered and was like, oh, we were even like starting to develop in that direction until I decided against it, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. This second concept was developed based on this timeline difference. During the 12th century on Earth, the Protoss were at the height of their golden age. The unquestioned rule of the Conclave led to the Protoss colonizing many worlds and spreading across space. If we went out there during this period, we would meet the expansionist, imperialist Protoss, led by Judicator Cortanul, the one who would eventually be responsible for the Discord, the event that caused the development of the rogue tribes, soon to be Dark Templar, the whole history of Adun. We find them before all of that happens, and that played into the other themes I was developing. It plays into an old WoW expansion concept of mine that I called Utopia. The short basics of Utopia were: Lothraxion returns from the planet Karkora, now redeemed in the light, but he attacks Azeroth, with his army of light, now involving much more than just Ranai. We don't understand why he would do that, but we are under threat from another world, so we take up arms and invade Karkora, and end up fighting the locals, undermining their industry, their military, their education. We basically become freedom fighters, and we get to question the morality of our actions. Is what we're doing justified just to defeat our enemy? Meanwhile, Lothraxion, light-forged or not, is still a dreadlord, and this was all a scheme. But not a strictly evil one, no. Lothraxion saw Azeroth divided, and seeing us complacent after Legion's defeat, decided that to stop the infighting, Azeroth must be united against a common enemy. And he decided to make himself that enemy, and provoke Azeroth into uniting against him. In this version of Warcraft in space, Lothraxion is still gathering his army of light. And because the Protoss use so much holy and shadow magic, the closest translation of psionics into Warcraft terms, he approaches the Conclave and attempts to recruit the Protoss into the army of light. In this way, this StarCraft adventure serves as an entry point into the Utopia plotline. We either stop the Protoss from joining this army, or help make it more balanced. However, in the end, this concept was lacking much of what makes us really enjoy StarCraft. It was lacking terrains, which are not strictly necessary, and it mixed StarCraft and much more into the Warcraft cosmology. But it was lacking something much more important, something that really makes the heart of the setting, not heart of the swarm, the heart of the setting, its characters. Is it really worth it to explore StarCraft if we never get to see the story of Raynor or Kerrigan or Phoenix, or see Mengsk scheming? If we never get to see the Overmind invade Aiur and the Protoss struggle with reuniting with their disgraced brethren? If we never see Stukov and Duran fighting, and Dugor cluelessly flailing around like a senile old man? These characters, these stories lie at the heart of StarCraft. And sure, we can tell our own stories in this setting, but without this backdrop, is it really the same thing? But how do we make this work? If Earth is still in the Middle Ages, how could we have Terrans here? Why did the Discord happen 1,000 years earlier? Were all the Protoss characters involved just born over 1,000 years earlier? And the first answer to that question lied in the map I made for Azeroth, strangely enough. If you are familiar with my map, you will know that I made it before the War Within and before we learned about the Protoss Empire, located on the other side of Azeroth in canon. I occupied that side with Pandaria, put back where it was said to be in earlier canon, and with my original content. Since I had already made this years earlier, I was not going to replace my original content with the continent we know nothing about, and with the people we barely met. I try to be more consistent than Blizzard in my own canon, so I couldn't retcon this. Still, the Arathi did have some cool stuff, and I did want to implement them somehow. So suddenly, these two orphaned concepts just clicked together. We will have Arathi in space. So what if, in this timeline, in this universe, the original Arathi who founded their empire on the other side of the world weren't stuck on another continent? What if they got transported into space? What if they somehow landed on Karkora and founded their empire there? However, in time, their society changes. They become different and start to distrust magic and magical talent. They still mix together very well and become essentially all half-elves, but eventually they gather their people with the magical talent, and banish them all together from their world in great colony ships. And those ships end up in the Koprulu sector. Instead of Terrans, we have Arathi. Instead of Earth, we have the planet Utopia. These colonists end up developing the same ideas and names for the most part, and by the time we get there, there is a James Raynor and an Arcturus Mengsk active. As for the Protoss, this is the flimsier part of the explanation. Somehow all the historical events in the Protoss story happened over 1,000 years earlier. The only explanation being given, alongside the individuals that were originally derived from Earth being now from the long way around Azeroth, is that some things want to happen. The universe tries to keep itself on track and make certain people meet certain other people, and time adjusts itself malleably to accommodate for these elements. Because we in the real world want the recognizable story to happen. And yes, that part is a bit of a cop-out, but we wanted to have these characters and these stories, and if that's what it takes, so be it. The key part that is still to be addressed here is how to fit the StarCraft and WarCraft cosmologies together. Though on the surface they may appear very different, analyzing enough of Blizzard universes will let you see just how many themes repeat themselves. Amon isn't that different from Sargeras in cosmological terms, but if we transplant him into the Warcraft universe, he isn't a demon. The Protoss, thankfully, talk a lot about the Void, and Amon makes perfect sense to fit into the cosmology as a Void Lord, just like them, associated with darkness and wants to consume and destroy everything. And what did the Void Lords send out into the universe to corrupt it? The old gods and their aberrations. And what is the Overmind if not an old god by another name, creating its own aberrations from the husks of people it conquers? It would be strange if all Xel'Naga came from the Void in this universe, the Void not really being much into creating stuff in the Warcraft universe. But conveniently, the Void and the Light are two sides of the same coin. So we can easily say that most Xel'Naga were beings of holy light, and Amon was one that simply flipped in the same way that we see some Naru fall to the darkness. And now we see all the pieces fall perfectly together. I could keep talking about what we've done with the actual story, how we enter it during Kerrigan's Chrysalis stage, and we help Raynor actually save her and use our Warcraft magic to free her from the Overmind's control early, and what it means for her character, something that is still developing for us. About learning from the Dark Templar and their special strike meant to kill Cerebrates and the Overmind, and how that can influence future plotlines on Azeroth. That is another huge topic, and if you want to learn more about it, do let me know. Until then, this is my Warcraft in space. This is something that, as you might know, something that I do love to do, mixing all the different universes together, mixing all the different worlds together, and seeing how they interact. It's not like your typical power scaling where they just take a character completely out of context and just smash the toys against each other and agree together on powers, on their role in the narrative and the meta-narrative role of certain super powerful characters, and how that means they're can punch on the multiversal level, omniversal level, low outversal level. I do not understand what the power scalers are talking about most of the time. This is not to shit on the power scalers, but I like to analyze these universes together and seeing how they fit together, seeing how they would interact with each other. This is something that I really love. Seeing those different disparate elements and trying to fit them together into something coherent, cohesive, and seeing how elements from one universe affect another. Like seeing how would the Witcher universe react, what would happen in the Witcher universe if through the conjunction of the spheres, the second conjunction at the end of The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, if through that they somehow got a lot of D&D level magic. If suddenly they have clerics with real holy powers, and suddenly they have wizards with wish and with other super powerful spells, and suddenly they have orcs that arrived from another world through those portals from the conjunction of the spheres. How would their world react to this new level of magic? And sure, you could say that undermines the themes of the setting, but I just want to see how this universe would react to something that really changes the status quo. And I believe that this merging of StarCraft with WarCraft really does let us shake up things for both sides, and that is what I live for in here. So if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what else you would like to know about this merge setting, if anything, or perhaps any other setting you are interested in seeing what they would look like if they were smashed with WarCraft, or like smashed with another setting like The Witcher and D&D being smashed together, and seeing how those different systems react to each other, or at least how would different universes look when you need to adapt them into a TTRPG format. Meanwhile, that will be all for this video, and I hope to see you next time.